Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Ready for another exploration?
Absolutely. We've got some pretty intriguing material today.
We do. We're diving into the recent thoughts of Krzysztof Jackowski. For those who might not know him, he's a well-known Polish clairvoyant.
Right, quite a figure. And apparently he was just involved in a documentary in Warsaw, something about a past case.
Yeah, that's right. Filmed recently,
Mhm.
and the premiere is expected sometime this fall. So definitely someone active.
And what's really caught our attention, and this is what we're focusing on, is this premonition he had just as he was prepping for a recent broadcast, apparently.
Exactly. A deeply concerning premonition, as he put it, about current world events.
Uh,
So our mission here is to unpack that specific vision he shared. We're working from a transcript from his official YouTube channel.
just to know with the Krzysztof Jackowski official. Yeah.
The video title translates to, "I experienced a disturbing premonition, a vision." And he recorded it on April 24th because he mentions Friday as tomorrow.
Okay, so pretty recent stuff.
Very recent. So let's get into it. What were the key things he talked about?
Well, straight off the bat, there was this disturbing feeling he had connected to Pope Benedict's passing.
Right, and it's worth noting. He said this before the funeral details were widely known. He mentioned having to check online for the date.
Yeah, so the timing is interesting. And his feeling wasn't just about the death itself, was it?
No, not exactly. It was more about the period around the funeral ceremonies. He actually said he hoped he was wrong, didn't wish for anything bad to happen.
Which you'd hope, obviously. But this unease, like it got more specific. He talked about danger.
Danger in the crowds, right?
Yes, danger linked to the crowd's gathering. And he even mentioned sensing it in like 3 specific spots within those crowds.
But he held back on saying exactly where.
He did. Seemed like he was worried about the power of suggestion, influencing things.
Which is, well, it's an interesting dilemma for someone in his position, isn't it? How much you share.
Definitely.
Okay, so after that, he seemed to pivot towards Donald Trump and global strategy.
Yeah, the vision suggested Trump is sort of waiting for something big to happen globally.
Something involving war, he said.
Mm-hmm. And this idea of America setting a kind of trap for Europe.
Which sounds quite dramatic. And he implied it wasn't just about Ukraine.
No, it seemed broader, like a potential betrayal of perhaps certain European ideas or maybe even specific countries. It wasn't entirely clear, but broader than just the current conflict.
And this is all part of some cunning plan, according to the vision.
Apparently so. A plan to sort of reverse global fortunes, shake things up. Not just about stopping China's rise, though that's part of it, maybe.
He thinks Trump is willing to, what was the phrase, ignite or trade something globally.
Yeah, to rebuild American dominance. There was an acknowledgement that America has, lost ground somehow.
It sounds ambitious. He mentioned a plan with 3 capital pillars.
He did, but without much detail on what those pillars are exactly. But the key thing was the pushback.
From the U.S. financial system.
Exactly.
Okay.
They apparently see this plan as, well, he used the word madness.
Madness.
Yeah.
Wow. And it seems tied to the dollar.
Very much so. It seems the core conflict is Trump's apparent willingness to maybe massively devalue the dollar.
Or even abandon it for something more speculative.
That seems to be the suggestion. And he gave a time frame, didn't he, for seeing the first signs?
Yeah, June. He predicted we might see the first clear signs of trouble for the dollar around June.
With countries starting to move away from it, affecting its value, its demand, he noted it's already kind of weak, relatively speaking.
That's a huge potential shift if it happened, the reserve currency status and all that.
Massive implications.
Okay, so then he also touched on Polish politics briefly.
Just a quick assessment, really. Called the current ruling coalition a fragile and unpleasant mix he expects to fall apart. Pretty blunt.
And what about Iran? The possibility of an attack.
His take was more cautious on the U.S. side. He emphasized America's position being perhaps weaker now.
A reluctance for direct conflict.
Yeah, especially on U.S. soil or against, say, a nuclear power like China. He seemed to think that would mean nuclear war.
So not direct conflict, but maybe benefiting from conflict elsewhere.
That's what he seemed to suggest, like in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, parts of Asia, drawing a parallel to the world wars, how they reshaped global power.
And he mentioned Trump previously stopping Netanyahu from an attack, kind of the global policeman role.
Yeah, portraying the U.S. in that kind of controlling strategic role.
Okay, this next part is, well, it's quite alarming. Terrorism in Europe.
It really is.
Yeah.
He envisioned a fatal terrorist attack being
It's
prepared.
fatal. And he didn't think it would be just random.
No, he believed it could be a provocation, deliberately engineered.
Engineered for what purpose?
To justify actions against certain groups, he explicitly compared it to Israel's actions in Gaza, suggesting the attack would paint these groups as ruthless and active in Europe.
That's a dark scenario.
Yeah.
So the attack happens.
Public opinion shifts, becomes accepting of subsequent actions by Israel, probably against Iran, he thought,
And the U.S. role in that?
to support Israel, allowing the U.S. to seem like a supporter, not the main aggressor. Convenient, as he framed it.
Wow. Okay. And linking back to Trump's financial plans? What if they fail due to that internal opposition?
Well, the vision suggested Trump might then be tempted to confront those financial authorities directly.
Which could be dangerous for Trump himself.
Potentially, yeah. As he gets closer to what Jackowski called a naked truth, something damaging to him and the U.S.
And following the potential attack in Europe, the massacre, he termed it.
Yes, he foresaw really significant societal unrest, pogroms,
Pogroms.
in major European cities.
That was the word used.
Yeah.
Young Europeans attacking refugees. So violently that refugees might actually flee Europe.
That is an incredibly disturbing image. He did say there would be opposing reactions, too.
He did acknowledge that, yes, it wouldn't be one-sided. But still, a very grim outlook for social cohesion.
He used an analogy, didn't he, to try and capture the overall situation.
Yeah, comparing the Ukraine and Gaza conflicts under Biden to a painful boil, which, under Trump, has now burst, offering some initial relief.
Sort of, yeah. Temporary relief, but then he immediately warned that gangrene is setting in.
Gangrene.
Oh.
So the relief is short-lived, and the underlying situation is actually becoming much worse, much more dangerous.
That's the implication, a really challenging global situation ahead. He framed it as a dilemma for the major powers.
Unless they accept China's dominance, financially, industrially.
Right, which he strongly implies the U.S. won't accept, hence the resistance, the potential conflict.
And just wrapping up, he mentioned feeling a bit tired.
Yeah, travel, late recording, said it might affect his clarity a bit.
And apologized for his dog snoring.
He did, yes. A little moment of levity, I suppose.
Yeah.
But he promised to be back the next day, Friday, feeling more rested and better able to perceive things.
Right, so just to quickly recap the main points from this source.
Okay. We had that disturbing feeling around the Pope's funeral period, potential danger in crowds.
Then Trump's big, risky global strategy, potential financial upheaval, issues with the dollar.
The possibility of an orchestrated, fatal terrorist attack in Europe as a provocation.
Followed by potential internal conflict in the U.S. and serious societal unrest, even pogroms in Europe.
And this overall sense of a festering global situation turning into gangrene.
It's quite a lot. And we need to stress, of course, this is all from the source material we looked at.
Yeah.
It's one individual's perspective, his visions.
Absolutely. It's presented as a premonition, an intuitive insight.
Which leads us to a final thought for you listening. Given these, frankly, unsettling predictions, what aspects of global events will you be watching more closely now?
Or maybe how do you personally balance these kinds of intuitive warnings, if you give them any weight, against the more traditional geopolitical analysis we usually rely on?
Definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.